In the last video, we added a data source, and after clicking the Add to Report button, you would be seeing this screen. This is your report edit page. We will be creating the report here. This table has been added by default for me. You may or may not get this. I will anyway delete this table. Now I know you want to start working on visualizations right away, but let's be patient and go step by step. Before we start working on the report, my suggestion is that you should always look at your data source once. You can open the data source by clicking this resource button in the menu and selecting Manage Added Data Sources. Here we click on Edit button. Now this is what our data source looks like. It has automatically identified the variables or the fields from our data. Not just the field name, but also the field type, whether it is a text or a number or a date, etc. This is why I want you to always look at data source. Since Data Studio automatically identifies all these things, it sometimes makes a mistake in judging it correctly. So you need to see that all the variables are included, their names are correct, and their type is correct. Now let's look at the fields. You can compare these fields on the left with the variables in the Google Sheet. If you compare them, you'll see that at the bottom we have one more additional field of record count. This was created automatically. For some sources like Google Sheets or Google BigQuery, this will be automatically created. This is useless for our problem at hand, so we will hide it. To hide it, click on these three dots and select Hide. Record count is not always useless. In fact, the reason for adding it automatically is because it is commonly used. Imagine you are looking at sales transaction data and in one of the columns you get salesperson name who made the sale. Now if you want to get how many sales were made by each salesperson, this record count field will be used there to find sales by each salesperson. In our data, each country's name comes only once, so in front of record count you will always get one only, so there is no point in keeping this, therefore we have hidden it. Next thing we are going to do is add a field. We will create a new field which will contain the value of total number of cases worldwide. To do this, we will click this button, Add a Field. First is the field name. I am going to name it Worldwide Cases. Next is the field ID. We will leave it to default. And here we will create the formula. Formula is simple. It is the sum of all the values in the total cases column. So we type sum, press tab, and within the brackets we add the values in this column by clicking its name. So this is the total cases column. We click this name and Data Studio will check whether this formula is okay or not. If it is okay, you will see a green tick here. We can click on this save button and this new field will be created. Now I want to clarify two things that might confuse you. When this new field is added, will it be added to our original data source, which was the Google Sheet? Will it be added there also? The answer is no. What happens in Data Studio stays in Data Studio. So don't worry about your data set. Data Studio will never corrupt it. Secondly, you may think that fields are columns of your data set. So how does this sum field exist within your data? The point is that fields may or may not be a column. Like here, it is just a value and it can exist like that. You can add entire column also. For example, let us add a death rate column which will calculate the ratio of total deaths over total cases for each country. For this, we again click on add a field. We name the new field as death rate. And this field is the ratio of total deaths over total cases. So we select total deaths divided by total cases. Click on save and go to all fields. And now we have this new field named death rate. However, death rate is for each country. But this worldwide cases field is one single value. I just want you to accept the fact that field can also have a single value stored in it. Okay, now what else is there on the screen? These are the column types. This is obvious and all of you would be knowing all these types of data, but you just need to make sure that the right type is selected for your data. Often data columns like product code, which contain only numerical digits, will be considered as numbers, but those are not numbers which can be added or subtracted. Those are product identification codes. So you must change the type of that column to text. Another thing for you to note is the color coding of these variables. Some are green, some are blue in color. Well, ideally, all the dimensions are supposed to be green and all the metrics are supposed to be blue. If you remember, we discussed about dimensions and metrics in the initial lectures. Dimensions are basically categorical variables which cannot be measured on a scale. For example, gender variable is a dimension. In this data set, country name is a dimension, so this variable is in green color. Metrics are numerical values which can be measured on a scale. For example, height of a person, GDP of countries, sales in an area, all these are metrics. In our example, all the other numerical values such as total cases, total recovered, total deaths, all these are metrics. But due to some reason, Data Studio thinks that these are dimensions. Even if it is classifying it incorrectly, this will not pose any significant problem to us when we are creating the report. Just remember to keep the type of metric variables as number. So this should be a number and not a text. As long as metrics, even if it is wrongly classified as a dimension, as long as it is stored as a number, there will not be a significant problem when we are creating a report. That's all we need to know about dimensions and metrics in Data Studio. Just ensure that your variable has the right data type and everything else will be fine. Other things on the screen are these 4 options. First is data credentials. This is related to sharing the report. We have a separate section on report sharing. There I will explain this part also. Data freshness is obvious. How often we want our data to refresh. So Google Data Studio will look at my Google Sheet every 15 minutes. I can change it to 4 hours or 12 hours also. Community visualization access is to allow some third-party visualization creators to access your data. Most of the time we have sensitive data, so I almost always keep it off. But since this is COVID data which is openly available, we can switch it to on also. I will leave it as it is for now. Field editing in reports is set to on, which means all these data options that we see in the screen at the bottom, these options will be available while creating the report also. No harm in that. So let's keep it on. That's all. I guess this lecture had a lot of theory and very few things to do, but here is the list of things that you have to do. You have to go to the resource option in the menu, open manage added data sources and click on edit option. You have to check the fields and their types. You have to hide the record count field, and you have to add two new fields. One is the worldwide cases and the other is the death rate. You can see the formula for these two here. That's all for this lecture. See you in the next one.